All right, seventh time. This will actually be the charm. The party is over, and what did we expect? Did we expect the party to go on forever? No, party lasts forever. Google and YouTube have removed the dislike counter, and you can tell it was a bad launch or completely unplanned launch because half of the people could actually still see the dislike counter even when it was supposedly disabled, and the thumbs down looks really, really awkward sitting there. What this marks is the conversation is over.
This conversation is over.
Live in the bugs, eat the pods. The Zuckerverse waits for us all. The original conversation that this video was supposed to be about was about how YouTube wants to be Netflix. They want to be broadcast. They want to tell you what they think and portray what they want you to see, but give you zero input back towards them. The second topic that I had for this was that Google, Facebook, YouTube are all tied in with the US government. There are overt and non-overt ways in which this is true. A lot of the code that allowed Google to become what they were was funded by the US government. There's also more anecdotal stories or more hidden stories about how there's actual funding coming in through third parties to Facebook and Google. There's an intelligence program that was killed immediately before Facebook launched, that a lot of the code is very similar, identical in the two platforms. In the summer of 2019, one of my friends was hosting a lot of photos on Google Drive, and I saw a news story that said that Saudi Arabia was investing a huge amount of money into Google, and so I told my friend, be prepared for Google to increase its prices on storage. He didn't know what I meant, but usually when you have a state actor that is funding a large company like this, when that funding gets cut, the company is forced to go to other countries to get the funding from other state actors. And in this case, most likely it was Google that was going to Saudi Arabia to sell their services to a state level actor. So we don't know exactly how the money's getting to them from different governments, but we do know that some of the money is funneled through third parties and some of it is coming through foreign governments. Tying these two together into more of a cohesive picture, in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, when they were provisioning the airwaves, the radio frequencies for broadcast and transceiving, they over-provisioned bandwidth for broadcasting. And they did that for a very specific reason. And that is the lucrative merger of corporation and Bernaysian state. What I mean by this is broadcast is critical to propaganda. Cell phones were possible even back in the 1950s. One of my dad's friends was a ham radio operator, and he had some rental space up in a mountain up near Mount Wilson, and he had a ham radio, and there was a phone line up there, and he would call in with his ham radio, and he would be able to tone dial telephone numbers to different people and actually make phone calls, cellular phone calls with his ham radio back in the 1970s. So this technology has lasted for a very long time. It just wasn't available to the masses because broadcast was over-provisioned for the uses specifically in propaganda. And that is what we are going to center the topic of this conversation around. Now, the reason why I say the conversation is over is YouTube is already deleting comments. I've had several comments deleted. Owen, I know you try and comment on a lot of my videos, but for whatever reason they disappear. I think you did comment recently and it came through, so maybe that whole thing has ended. But broadcasters are broadcasters because they broadcast. They don't transceive, they only transmit. There's no receiving in the conversation. There's no two-way about it. When YouTube disabled the dislike counter, and this is why they're going to be able to do it with impunity. When YouTube disabled the dislike counter, how many of you in the audience went over and made an account with a BitChute or with an Odyssey? You know, Odyssey would probably be the more logical next step because they have a more broad range of content. My guess is that not very many of you did this. Rumble, I'm not as interested in Rumble. I'd never say never, but they're funded by one of their funders or one of their backers is Peter Thiel, who's one of the people who backed Facebook. So most likely whatever kind of shenanigans are going on in the back end of Google and Facebook are probably going to take place in Rumble purely because the hooks are already there. Odyssey also I see potentially having similar problems in the future just because it's a corporation. Corporations are easier to buy a majority stake in, and then you can kind of steer them where you want the company to go, which is why I'm on BitChute, is it's a sole proprietorship. So I do see a little bit more legs as far as independent platform for them. But that's just my opinion, man. But what I'm saying is I'm seeing a very, very weird road. And it looks like they're moving the pieces into place that are similar to what you would find in the Eastern Bloc from the 1920s through the 1980s and into the early 1990s, where the quote is, we know that they're lying, they know we know they're lying, etc., etc. Basically, everyone is lying to everyone about everything, specifically the politicians, or that's where the lies originate. But what they don't talk enough about is the citizens repeating the lie. This is kind of what goes on in these environments, is the lies themselves aren't really meant to convince anyone of anything, they're meant to demoralize. So if you watch a politician say a lie, and you're not allowed to hear anything else besides the lie the politician says, you know that it's a lie, but most likely, at some point, you will repeat it. And because you know it's a lie, but it's the closest thing that you know is to the truth, you know you're lying, and it weakens your moral fiber, it demoralizes you, it reduces your level of productivity. This is very, very, very damaging, and why it's very important to always tell the truth with kindness. But it all came down to the people weren't allowed to share information between each other. You need to isolate people for the lies to be there. If you can shut down the word, you can enslave the people that drink from its waters. People need the truth. They need the truth to flourish. And you need a community to have access to that communication where you share that truth with other people and go beyond. Having access to the truth allows you to build a strong foundation, and strength and truth allow people to create. They allowed us to create so many different things. Microchips, internal combustion engines, machines that fly in the sky. Like, these are incredible achievements of humanity, but they're all based in telling what is true from what is false. Understanding what is true allows you to reach the heavens. But the Eastern Bloc, like I said, was intended to demoralize. And one of the most interesting experiences of Americans in this context, in this paradigm, is how easily they were converted over to that method of thinking. You would think, oh, what Americans? Were some trapped in Russia? No, in Robert C. Cialdini's book Persuasion, and I highly recommend both his book Persuasion and Persuasion, he goes over the experience of American POWs in the Korean War. And the Koreans were very harsh. They were brutal on the Americans to break them. But breaking someone that way with physical abuse, it doesn't really break their spirit, because they're like, well, I got beat up. I can take physical pain. Most people can. The fear of pain is worse than the pain itself in most cases. But the Chinese lenient policy didn't have any of that. And what the lenient policy was the Chinese would start with a small concession from the American troops. That small concession could be something as simple as admitting that the United States isn't perfect, saying it on a piece of paper, and then signing their name. From there, the Chinese would come back later on and then ask the soldier to write down why the United States wasn't perfect, or something that they did that was immoral, that was based in capitalism. And little by little, they would get the Americans to admit more and more and more and cooperate with their prison guards. Eventually it got to the point where they could get Americans to write essays for essay contests, and they would write very long works about why communism was fantastic. And they could, and sometimes they would win, if they wrote essays about why both communism and the United States are great. But most of the time, people who wrote about why communism was great would win the essay contests. And when they won the contest, they would get something like an extra hour of sleep, or a banana, or just something menial, something that would give them a little bit of a dopamine kick, but wasn't really a very big reward. That way it could be used again to further leverage more concessions out of them, to betray their friend who is trying to escape the prison camp. When I think about that, things like little worthless rewards for doing something that your masters want you to do, but something that's completely worthless. Like, what could be more worthless than a like on a video? I really can't think of very much. It costs nothing. It's really just the flipping of a Boolean, a 1 to a 0 or 0 to a 1. And that's it. And this is how they manipulate us now. Do you get the like on that comment? If they make your comment disappear, you can never get the like. How are you supposed to get attention on the platform? This is how they shut down conversation. If you want to learn more about the Korean War, I'll leave a video pinned right here in this video, especially if you're not really into reading necessarily about psychology. I do find it fascinating, but I know not everyone does. But with that experience in Korea, you can really see how easy it is to manipulate even highly trained soldiers that are primed and understand exactly how to avoid interrogation, can be broken into selling out their friends. You have to isolate them, because if you don't isolate them, then you can't get them to make these little first steps. Someone who is in a group will find reinforcement among the group with an outside aggressor. And then the next thing is to find a way to make them lie. If you find a way to make someone lie, it weakens the moral fabric, and it's easier to get that little wedge in there to implant a cancer, essentially, that will grow and eventually destroy them. And then you give them small rewards for helping you along, for furthering your objectives, just a little bit, and make them random. I've talked about this in previous videos as well. But even with all of this, even as you see a lot of people breaking, a lot of people going along with the program, you can know that I never will. This channel actually has already been flagged as such anyway, so there's really not much I can do. I'll leave a video or a tag right here on the video that did it. Basically, it's about how to mask your contacts that will make it impossible for a Facebook or a Google to create a relationship map as far as who you're associated with. And really, it wouldn't take that many people following that instruction video to really screw with their databases, man. Like, it would be very, very interesting to see if a bunch of people added a huge number of fake contacts into these systems. But take heart, you're not alone. As for my part, my friends and I, Ambrose, he's one of my featured friends in the channel, we're starting up a charity to help homeless people throughout the Southern California region, in the LA and San Diego area where I am. Because really, the best thing that you can do is to build something beautiful. Even if there's only so much you can do for the homeless population, one of the things you can do is give them some additional basic human dignity. They're on their feet all day. High quality socks. What we're going to do is we're going to give out high quality socks to homeless people so that they can avoid infections and can feel a little bit more comfortable as they are out and about. If there's one quiet part that you never hear them actually say out loud, it's that the people that are behind these different systems, that are behind Facebook and YouTube and seek to isolate people, they hate private charity. And the reason I think they hate private charity is private charity helps to ease the burden on other people. And if you ease the pain of other people, then there's not as much of an excuse to create a large institution that can be skimmed off of with the promise of helping the less fortunate. So you make the promise that you'll help the less fortunate, and then you skim some of the funds off the top for your friends and for favors, just to make sure that you can enhance your own level of power. As for the channel, it will be taking a backseat to the charity. I will not go completely inactive. I actually enjoy making this type of content. I enjoy making tutorials, and I enjoy talking to you all. You could probably tell that I've taken a break. I just needed to recharge my batteries. It's been quite an interesting year in 2021 getting the charity set up. Now we have everything that we need to be fully kicking off, so that's going to be job number one. I will continue with tech projects. Of course, I'm always working on tech projects, and I do have a couple of videos preloaded and recorded, but I did want to kind of set the expectation that this channel will be a little bit less regular in the coming future. Remember, like I said, as far as, they hate charity, whatever you talk about doing, don't do it in Minecraft. Do it in real life. Build something beautiful. Help someone else build something beautiful. If you don't want to start a charity, you don't have to start a charity. Go volunteer. Make a new friend. Give someone a compliment. There's a million things that you can do to help build community. This is just my friends and I little contribution to the world is where we're going with this. Take heart. You're not alone. You'll never be alone. If you participate, you will understand that completely. That said, I'll catch you on the flip side. Nick out.